Hello everyone and welcome to the 20th Cult Women's Voices, which is fantastic to see lots of you here. As Sarah said, this came out of the Cooperative Women's Challenge, and it's basically an opportunity to have some informal conversations with women across the cult movement from every sector, every part of the world, to talk about what makes them tick, what is the source of their lives, who are they, how have they got to where they are, what can we learn from each other as women who are active in co-ops. I've left everyone on mute for now, which is, if that you could keep yourself on mute, that'd be fantastic. The chat is open though, so if you've got any questions, do pop them in there, and Sarah will be keeping an eye on that. And then we'll hopefully have a little bit of time at the end as well for some questions if anyone has anything they'd like to ask Jane. So Jane, welcome, and thank you so much for saying yes and agreeing to be grilled today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I feel very honoured to be one of the 20.
Hopefully it'll be
so
many,
far.
many more after this. Exactly. So first of all, Jane, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, I know when we spoke previously, you grew up in a very rural area. So what was it like growing up in Etwall? What was your school like and your family like?
Well, probably close-knit would be the stock answer to that, but in our case it was true, and I'm actually back living in that village, back in the same house that I grew up in, actually, because mum and dad are both of an age, they're 92 and 88 respectively, where they need some additional support, and you know, I'm in that lucky position I can offer that. So the village I grew up in, it had a primary school and a comprehensive school, and I went to both of those in the village. So it was quite a closed, very close, and you know, Derby was all of 6 miles away and a bus trip, and you know, just seemed very sophisticated to me to go on the bus to Derby or Burton. That was 6 miles the other way. It was very safe, very happy, and I've got 3 brothers and we're quite close, and a lot of the friends that I made then I've still got, which you know, I feel very, very blessed, really. A lot of people lose touch with those sorts of roots, but we've kept in touch, and that's been a real bedrock. I think that's the word, isn't it? Bedrock. So yeah.
I know you shared some lovely photos of that time, so I'll share those in a moment. But what was the school like?
So the primary school was kind of just, I guess, like any other primary school. And I think, having gone into primary schools with my own daughter, I don't think they have changed quite so much. They probably have, but that always seems quite a familiar environment when I go into a primary school. I think, oh yeah, I recognise this environment. The comprehensive school was different. The comprehensive school I went to, I started in 1971, and it had been a grammar school, and on the grammar school they had added on another block, and that was the secondary modern, and another block, and that was the avant-garde comprehensive system. And then Derbyshire County Council went all comprehensive just before I went. I think I was the first intake that didn't sit an 11 plus. So my intake was all abilities, all comprehensive, no streaming until you made your selection for, I think in the 3rd year you could do no, I think you could do a modern language, or say a practical skill like needlework or home economics if you were a girl, and then woodwork or metalwork if you were a boy, or into the more academic subject, it was TD or technical drawing. So no girls did technical drawing. I never missed that at all. Yeah, that was the sort of the system that I went into, and actually I didn't think it at the time, but looking back, it was a really good system. It was a really, really good system, and met up with teachers, you know, on school reunions, and they said, you know, we made the conscious decision to come and work for John Port School because it was so progressive and innovative, and Derbyshire County Council was well known for being progressive in education, and I think we had a really, really excellent education. And again, I think that was a foundation and a bedrock for me. I've always been grateful for that.
So what were your interests? What were your kind of formative years like then? How did you think that shaped you?
Anything to do with words, anything that involved reading. Nothing to do with sport, if I could possibly help it. I had very frequent headaches and more periods than anybody in their life ever had when it came to math and came to games, so I could get out of it. I don't know why they never twigged on that one. But I didn't particularly like maths. I like languages, French, words and poetry and music and those sort of things. And really, although we were encouraged to do what we call now STEM subjects, girls were, they did try. It wasn't a message that landed with me particularly well. So I liked English Lit, English Lang, history, geography. Had to do one
science. Heart, Jane. Yes.
Yeah, I know. Had to do maths until O level, and had to do one science, so did biology, and that was me. So that's what floated my boat.
And who were the key people in your life at this time? Obviously, you've mentioned your family and your brothers and sisters. What about like friends or teachers? Anyone who really stands out, who supported you in this time?
Yeah, well, there was a music teacher there called Wendy Smith, who we thought was ancient because she was a teacher, and turns out she was only about 7 years older than than me. No, she's about 10 years older than me, and I still know her. She lives in Mickleover, and she belongs to the church my mum and dad go to. So I still know her, still see her. That's a little bit odd. The history teacher, Mr. Way, he lived in the village. He's passed away sadly since. He was a really good influence, a solid person, so knowledgeable. I remember we had a school reunion about 8 years ago, and he came to that, and flipping heck, he got our test papers for O levels from 1970, and I wasn't really scheduled to pass. And he got all the remarks that he made 3 out of 10, must try harder. He got one of those, very recall memories, and he just kept everything. I mean, goodness knows what his house looked like. But he was nice. He was a great character. And English teacher John Sutton was my form teacher as well. And Mr. Cunningham, and I think they're all around as well. John Sutton definitely is. He's moved away. I think Mr. Cunningham lives locally. So it's strange, isn't it, when you go back to, and people are still around this many years on, so 50 years on. So as it is now. Yeah, it is.
Shared some photos. I'm just going to share this photo that you shared. It's lovely. So who's this?
That's me in the pushchair. I was a slow walker. That's why I never liked games. I was about 18 months old there, and the little blonde girl, Susie, is still a friend. And when I went to go up to the retail conference, it's held in Congleton. She doesn't live far from there, so I'm pulling a trip to see her when when I go up there. So that's nice. Yeah,
that's brilliant. So what about your other parts of who else influenced you? So let's talk about your family a little bit, because you have quite an interesting, wonderful blended family. So can you
I do now. Yeah, I do now. So I've got one daughter, and she's 32. But when I married her dad, he had been married before and had 2 children, and they regard me as theirs, and I regard them as mine. And so there were, I also had 2 brothers. And then when Ailsa was about 11, this was rather sad, but my husband's sister died, and she was a single parent. So, and she left an 8-year-old boy. So we were the, if anybody thinks it's scientific when people go into where children are best placed, it absolutely isn't. We were the ones with a spare bedroom, so he came to us, and that's how we got him. And Ailsa regards him as another brother. And yeah, had a WhatsApp message from him this morning. He's in New Zealand at the moment, so I was messaging him a bit frantically with all that storm that they had that seemed to devastate. But luckily he's on the South Island, and the storm was on the North Island, so he's okay. Yeah, so he's very much part, was part of our family. So yeah, gave birth to 1, got responsible for 4. So
I'm going to show you like another couple of pictures here because they are lovely. Let me share this one. I think it's of you and Joe and Ailsa. Let me share this one.
Oh, this is a really treasured possession. Oh yeah, that's right. So one of my regrets always was that I didn't go to university. I did have the chance to go when I was 18 and decided not to go. And I really, really regretted it. So I was so pleased when Ailsa wanted to go to university. She got into Sheffield Hallam. She qualified as a nurse. And this photo is really, really special to us because it's not only her graduation, but the 3 of us are all there. And I don't know if you can tell, but honestly, it was the proudest day of my life. It really.
You look so proud, Jane. It's a lovely picture.
Yeah, so that was great. That.
And then there's another picture here, which I like these ones as well, which I think is wonderful.
That was such a long time ago. Yeah. So, and when we celebrated our silver wedding, we used that photo as the invitation, and the caption on the bottom was just going to give her a ring. Get it? And then on the back it said 25 years later. So that was quite a nice photo. That phone booth is in the I don't know where we were on that one, but that phone booth was in the grounds of the village hall of the village where we got married. So wasn't a phone booth anymore. And that one, where was that taken? We were obviously at a party quite recently. Oh, I know. I think we were at Bistro Live. But I don't know if anybody knows Bistro Live. That's my daughter. We went out for a night out with some friends. Maria went with us. I don't know if you know Maria Lee. She used to be a president at Central England, and she's on the board. So, and there were a few colleagues from the co-op went along, and nieces and friends and so on. It was just a girls' night out. But it's quite a nice night out. It's good food, and you can dance on the table. So what's not to like?
I mean, I'm really getting the impression, Jane, you're very much a people person, aren't you?
Yeah, I like people. I like
working
people.
in co-ops, which is a good thing.
It helps
a little bit. So let's talk about how you're the cooperative part of your life, because you're involved in several co-ops, and not just Central England.
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Cases, which, as Sarah said, is the cooperative social enterprise development
Yep.
agency in Leicester. You've got you're a carer as well, because you're looking after your parents too.
Yeah.
And you're working for Leicester Rape Crisis too. So first of all, how did you find out about co-ops? What was your first interaction with this whole people-centred movement?
Well, my first interaction was nothing to do with people. In time-honoured fashion, we had our bread delivered by the co-op in the 60s, and I can remember my mum quoting a membership number, and getting reams of stamps periodically that it was a task to lick them and stick them in the book so you could go and get your money back. You got money at the co-op, and you got items if it was Green Shield stamps. So the co-op one was a bit more favourite, really. We used it to discount off the next bread bill or whatever. So that was the first interaction. My granny actually was a not a women. She belonged to the Women's Guild when she moved to Derby, but before that, she was in the Guild of Cooperators, and that was men and women. She lived in Manchester, so I don't know whether that was more of a Manchester thing than a national thing, but she was in that, so I knew about that. She'd talk about going to the guild and so on. And then when I was looking for a job, leaving school with A levels, I just wanted a job that required A levels to make some sense of the last 2 years of studying, rather than go to a job that I could have got 2 years previously, if you see what I mean. The co-op was offering a management trainee scheme, and the co-op for me was Derby and Burton Co-op. So I applied for it and got accepted onto the traineeship scheme, and was really pleased because looking at it purely from an experience point of view, I could go to food and non-food, to funeral, to travel, the dairy, the bakery. They had officers and so on and so forth. I thought, oh, this will be really good. I'll find out and get some skills, and then I'll move on. In that callous way you think when you're 18. So, there was absolutely no commitment from me whatsoever. I just thought it was a good opportunity, and then went along and they had an induction week. So it told you all about funeral and dairy and opportunities within all those sections. I actually had asked at my interview, I thought I wanted to be a personnel officer. That's
People
what I
again, people, yeah.
Well, that's what I thought personnel meant. When I did it for real as part of my training, I found out it was all about policies and procedures and paperwork, and didn't like any of that. So I'm quite glad the co-op gave me the opportunity to try different things. Otherwise, I would have been really, I would have been in a set on a track, and then you find yourself, don't you, if you're on a track, that you can't kind of cross over and take a different route. So it did me a really big favour, that did. Anyway, had this induction week, and it was the Friday after lunch slot, like the graveyard slot, like they just bunged it on the end. We had this talk from a member relations officer, and honestly, if boredom was a physical thing, you'd have been able to cut it with a knife in that room. Everybody had been to the pub, because everybody did in 1978 in the lunch hour, especially a Friday lunch hour. So we were, nobody was paying any attention whatsoever, was hoping for an early release, and so that kind of that was how it was. So I went into that session, I can remember as if it was yesterday, with zero expectations, and came out an hour and a half thinking, flipping heck, that was amazing. I had no idea that the co-op was owned by its customers, and it's a different business model, and it has a purpose, and it was just like switching a light on. And honestly, I've been sold ever since. So that was, everybody else went, that went on about 30 minutes longer than it needed to, and I went out going, I could remember like teacher's pet going up afterwards and saying, I really enjoyed that. Is there any chance I could do some of this training, part of this training course that lasted 2 years? Any chance that I can do it in your department? And John, who was the member relations officer, who again became a good friend as we worked together later on, he was like, blooming heck, did a double take. Well, yes, and that was the start of the co-op journey, if you like. And what a lucky sort of Friday afternoon that turned out to be for me, because that really set me on a path that being a personnel officer would not have given me at all, in terms of pleasure and variety and opportunities. It really was a job made for me. And I can remember my mum saying to me once, I came back and I'd started working in this department. She said, "But what exactly is it you do?" And I said, "Well, I talk to people." And she said, "Oh, well, I'll be all right at that then." That was it. That was it.
That's fantastic. I love that story. I mean, before, Jane, you said that you've always been glad to get up and go to work, which I think is something that all of us aspire to do. So can you talk a little bit about your journey from that first Friday afternoon to being president of, Central Co-op, Central England as it was? So did Derby and Burton merge into something to form?
Yes, it did. Derby and Burton merged and became East Midlands Co-op. They merged with North East Midlands Co-op. NEMCO became MCO for them, and Derby and Burton became East Midlands Co-op. There were a few other mergers while I was there as well. Stafford and Stone, I think, came in with us. And by then I was working in the member relations department. So that was really interesting and good, in that, it doesn't matter how well you manage mergers. Some people will feel regretful that they've been taken over, or in a way, and kind of it was my role to try and mitigate against those feelings, and to say, no, kind of, we're all one now, we're all part of a bigger organisation, and stronger together hadn't been invented as a slogan then, but that was a phrase, it was, and that felt a really important piece of work to do. So I did quite a lot of nighttime travelling between here and Stafford and Stone. It's quite a rural stretch. Broke down once, I remember that. A prison officer stopped and saved me and gave me a tow back. He was just coming back from HMP Sudbury, I think. Yeah, so that was that. And then again, going up to Ripley and Alfreton and all around there, sort of bits that are now kind of bits that I now work with in another life. But I mean, a lot of water flowed under the bridge between me being member relations officer, because I actually left in 1985 and then came back on the board in 2015. So 40 years. So it was a lot.
What made you stand for the board at that time?
Elaine and Tanya, I think. So this is a good idea. Yeah, so I mean, I'd always kept involved. I mean, even though I left to work in the new worker co-op development sector. I always kept links and friendships and that. So yeah, I went to meetings and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so Lady in the chat has just said, arm twisted into standing. Yes,
it took me about a nanosecond to see whether it was a good idea or not. Yeah. So
brilliant.
Yeah, so that's how I got. But I mean, I do think it helped that having worked for the Society for 7 years, I mean, it's a totally different organisation to the one I left. But having said that, co-ops have been around for a long time. So the threads are there, the building blocks are there. It just kind of looks different. It might be in a different building, but it's still very similar.
So the litter picking photo you shared, is that from Central?
Yeah, now that's nothing to do with the co-op. That's to do with the job that I'm doing at the moment.
Okay, well, we'll come on to that in a moment.
It was, okay, me emerging from a thorny bush.
Yeah, we'll be back in a second. This is a teaser for everybody. Just quickly on that, it's fantastic that you were encouraged by 2 other women. And
yeah, absolutely.
So who else encouraged you in this time? Because standing for the board for a major organisation is not always an easy thing to do. So who encouraged you and who helped you in that role?
Well, colleagues were very encouraging. So I work for CASE, and that is a workers' cooperative. So they were kind of already in that world, and they said yes, do that. That would be. It's good for you. It's part of CASE has been a member of Co-ops UK since it started in sort of 1985. So in a way, it's just another branch of family. So they were encouraging. Joe thought it was a good idea. My husband and daughter, nobody could think of a reason why not, really. So nobody discouraged me. but yeah, it was good to have that. I think Karen Bevan as well, she was very encouraging. She's member and community relations officer in Leicestershire area, which is where I was working and living at the time. So yeah, lots of people said, what a good idea, you should go for it. And I kind of stood thinking, well, I think you have to stand a few times perhaps to get your name known, because although you might know quite a few people, you know, it's a big society. Geographically, it's huge. So impact wise, you know, you really
Bex, can I
feel quite unknown.
Bex, can I just jump in on a question? So Jane, one of the themes that we keep asking really is just around, you know, so the time that you're working there, so the role of women really. So how important were other women, or what do you think co-ops offer women, or were offering women at that time that you were there?
So I would say, in truth, in 1985, working for Derby and Burton Co-op, it probably wasn't that women friendly, if I'm absolutely honest. And it's, to be honest, it's one of the reasons why I left, because so what happened was I was called a member development officer. They didn't give me the title of member relations officer. When the member relations officer was promoted to be the public relations officer, the job was re-advertised, and initially 3 of us took on the roles in 3 different geographical areas. And then there was more shuffling around, and the other 2 left, and I was sort of last woman standing and did the role for the whole of the society. So in my head, and I think everybody on this call would say, well, that's member relations officer. You're doing the same job that John did before. I could see the justification when we were just in our areas, but once I was doing the job, I should have had that title, and didn't get it, and it rankled. And I know the reason I didn't get it. You know, I was quite young, but I don't think even in those days that was a good enough excuse, and I was female. So I left. I got another job in a bit of a huff. Maybe I should have said, oh well, you know, I don't think that's right, and I'm going to have a row about it. But I thought, well, I'll go somewhere where it seems that it is a little bit more, that there was I mean, I'm not saying where I went was absolutely perfect, and I don't think anywhere was in 1985. I think we've come a long way since then, but it was better. And so, and of course, then I was having decided I was leaving and handed my notice in, and that caused a certain stir, I do believe, I've heard since in the boardroom, with people saying, why are you letting somebody go who's reasonably good at the job, and maybe there's a mistake there. And you know, I was asked to go and see the chief executive officer at the time, and I said how I felt about it and how I've been treated. And I've got a letter, and I've still got it somewhere, offering me the salary and the car and the pension and be in NACO, because that was the other thing. They wouldn't let me join NACO. They said I'd got to stay in Usdaw, and therefore NACO pay rates were different. So
so can you explain what that is for people who might not know NACO?
Oh, so NACO was the National Association of Cooperative Officials, and Usdaw was the union of shop workers. And you know, talk about a hierarchy. I mean, I don't quite understand it, but that's how it was. And it was just naked sexism. And anyway, gave me a certain amount of pleasure to say too little too late. and I didn't go back. And in a way that it did feel as if I was cutting off my nose to spite my face a little bit, because I really, really liked the job and really liked the people I worked with, and that. But it was just one of those. I just thought, if I go back, I'll be. I just might have made a couple of enemies along the way. It just might not be the best thing to do. And you know, to be honest, in those days as well, the bullying could be quite nasty, and I thought, I'm just making life difficult for myself here. So I'll turn down the offer of a slightly bigger salary than I'd had actually originally left, but a much bigger than what I'd left for, and a car, because I just thought I would just to piss people off, and got, you know, I thought there were better ways of, and it's that thing about wanting to get up and go to work. I didn't want all that politics at the back of it. Just wanted to get on with the job. So, and I don't regret that. You know, I was probably not as better off financially, but it seemed like it was the right. I don't think you should ever go back anyway. So that's what I decided to do. So I took a leap off into a complete unknown and a really, really different world. Yeah, that was great too. And I mean, kind of, I've worked in that sector ever since, so it can't have been that bad.
That sector's worker co-ops, isn't it?
And that's worker co-ops, yeah, and that's helping.
Let's talk a little about CASE now, because I've got some lovely photos here. So I'm going to share the hedge one, because I presume that's what to do.
Oh yeah, well, this is litter picking. This isn't creating co-ops at all, but this is this is just doing some. We're part of a project at the moment. It's just coming to an end, and it was just a team building exercise, because there are lots of different organisations in this project. So CASE is just one of them. The Rural Community Council is another, Vista is another, and WEA is another, and so on and so forth. So therefore, you don't really see the people you're working with unless you have days like this. And somebody's good idea was, let's have a day where we do a bit of good and get to know each other, and then go for a nice lunch afterwards. So this was me just emerging from
a bush.
From a bush with a dirty in my hand.
No, so CASE has been going for 40 years, isn't it? So it's 40 years last
year. That's right. Yeah.
From the 40th celebration.
Yes. So
talk us through who these people are. I think not
right.
recognisable, but
they are. Yeah. So there's me in the middle, and then Dorothy is to the left, and then next to her is Paul Gosling. So Paul is, I mean, people read the Co-op News, he still writes articles for the Co-op News, but he started with CASE, Leicester and Cooperative CDA, it was known back in the day, was one of the founder members, and we've always kept in touch. Dorothy went to work for CASE, having started a workers co-op in Coventry, and she was on ICOM Women's Link Up. So I don't know if anybody on this call remembers ICOM Women's Link Up, but ICOM was the industrial common ownership movement, and it was the umbrella body for workers co-ops, and ultimately merged with what was the cooperative union in those days to form Co-ops UK. This is a bit like that link, isn't it, where you see comedy links, see who knew who and when and why. So on the other side of me there is John Goodman. Now he was a founder member of Coventry CDA and worked for Co-op UK for a while. So he and Dorothy knew each other, because I think he'd been her co-op development worker when she set up the co-op in Coventry selling books. So that's how they knew each other. And John and I have known each other as well, because I worked for Coventry CDA for a time. And then next to John is Pauline Green, the lovely Pauline, and she was chief executive of UK. And I first met Pauline in her role as Co-ops, the chief executive of Co-ops UK, because she was really instrumental, I think, in helping the merger, ICOM and Co-ops UK, and then really energising the Co-op Union, and then with its new partnership with ICOM to make it into the organisation that it is today. And she is great, and she came and spoke at our silver when Case was 25 years old, and then, you know, we were delighted when she could come and speak at our 40th. And then Bob is next to her, and again, I've known Bob. He was chief exec at Mid Counties. I think it was Oxford and Swindon when I first got to know him. Yeah, so it was nice to meet up with both of them on that occasion. Yeah, there's quite a history of cooperation in that photo, isn't there?
There is. It's lovely. So Paul wrote an article for us on I'll show you shortly about the 40th anniversary. So I know he holds a lot of affection.
Yes.
For it.
Yeah.
Which is lovely. Oh, Claudia says it's a lovely photo.
Yeah.
So does Rebecca Hamilton. It's lovely. Great. So what does a typical day look like for you at Case? What do you do there?
There isn't one. There is no typical day, and that is what I really, really like about it. So we recently changed our way of working. So we are, as I said, we are a workers' cooperative. It's Leicester and County CDA started off very traditionally as part of an economic development unit of a local authority. But with great foresight, Paul Gosling was one of them, another founder members. And hold on a minute, if we are setting up workers' cooperatives, we ought to practice what we preach. We ought to be a workers' cooperative. And we were set up slightly differently. So I was working across the border at this time for Derbyshire CDA, 1985. And that was set up very much as an economic development unit project, and it was very much like a local authority branch, really. Leicester was different, and it's really interesting and really meaningful about why it matters to be a cooperative, because we were set up as a cooperative. So then in the 90s, when the first sort of phase of cutbacks and local authorities being pegged on what they could spend and so on and so forth, and there was a lot of pruning back, and councils were having to do only statutory delivery. And economic development units, as a, you know, across the piece, across the whole country, were kind of disbanded and became, what are they called, business LEPs and things like that. So we were grant funded, so, you know, that's quite a cozy world for people who've had local authority grants, but suddenly the grants are taken away. And what happened to lots and lots of CDAs, I'm not being critical of them, because this was they didn't really have, the workers didn't have a say in it. They were just, people were just issued with redundancy notices, and away you go. In Leicester, and I was working at Leicester by this time, we had that opportunity of saying, well, just a minute, we're constituted differently. We have a grant from you, thank you very much. We have fill in our SLA, that's a service level agreement. But if you're going to stop doing that, that's fine, but we'll actually carry on, because we don't have to be made redundant or make ourselves redundant. We'll carry on. And that was a decision we took collectively, and we negotiated with the local authority. We were funded by the city and county by this time, but with both of them, that they would reduce our grant a third. So over 3 years we would lose our grant funding. And then we had 3 years of a business plan, to put a business plan together and start changing from being a de facto local authority project into a real live independent cooperative, where people, where the workers made their own decisions about their own working environment. So a bit scary, you know, We could have taken the money, the redundancy, and run, or we could have stayed to fight. And we wanted to do that because there is still quite a live, it's small, but there's a live worker co-op sector in Leicester and Leicestershire because of the CDA. And where other CDAs have set up and then folded, sadly, without that additional support, and it's not financial support, it's just that advice and mentoring or what have you, a lot of co-ops have folded. And I think co-ops have to get to a certain size and a certain age, and probably, you know, if you look at the history of co-ops, a lot of co-ops started before the Rochdale Pioneers cracked it. So there was this history of trying and failing and trying and failing, and then hitting your stride, and then keeping going until you reach that sort of point where you are big enough to survive knocks and, you know, recessions and all sorts of things, or key people leaving and all sorts of manners, you know, the invention of the combustion engine probably. Think, you know, things change, don't they? Yeah, you get to that point of survival. So yeah, Case went out on its own. A few other CDAs did as well, and a few others have formed themselves since. But that's the gestation of Case. So we kept going. So we are quite a close bunch. I trust them, they trust me, and we have a really, really good working relationship. So how we work now? So up until, this is a bit of serendipity. This is up until the end of 2019, we were very traditionally in an office, and we were forking out 15 or 18 grand a year for office space and really not utilising it. We were sort of working from home and a lot, and then went, oh, why don't we make that next leap and work from home? So in January 2020, we were set up with laptops, shredders, scanners, home offices, and then in March 2020, COVID went. Everybody was scrambling to buy a shredder and a scanner and printer at home, and we were already set up. So it was really, really lucky that we were able to do that. But at the same time, we've slightly changed our legal structure as well, and we are now co-workers. So we have self-employment. We Case gets contracts, and we have team meetings, and who wants to take that contract on, who'd like to work in that bit of the contract, and we can pick and choose. And so we're all of that age, 60-ish, where we're, you know, thinking of retirement, want part-time work or whatever. And having that opportunity to pick and choose what you want to do is just fantastic, you know. And I keep reading this article, people say, oh, we only work a 4-day week, and it's been amazing. I'm thinking, well, yeah, we did that sort of 5 or 6 years ago, and I think that's what co-ops do. They're at the cutting edge because you just respond to what you want to do. And it sounds really self-indulgent, and it is, and it's great, and that's why I enjoy doing what I do.
Well, that's an interesting way of putting it, Jen. I don't know whether it is self-indulgent. Maybe it's more.
I'm being facetious, but it is self-indulgent, but it is good.
But it's actually putting people at the heart of what you're doing. I think it's putting people first, which I think what all people should be doing.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily putting myself first, but it's actually putting co-workers first.
It puts all of us first
at the heart, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is about the self-indulgent bit, that's only slightly being because we've got a plan now, because we're, you know, I don't want in 10 years time to say, well, we're all in our 70s now and it's just going to peter out. So our last recruitment was a woman, Emma, who is not in the same age demographic. And I know there's no retirement age now, so we could all be still here in 10 years time. Depends what people want to do. It's up to them. Yeah. But you know, she sees a long-term future with Case, which is good for Case and good for her. And we're also going to recruit an apprentice who we are going to put through the Barefoot training scheme. So, and he is He works in a workers' co-op. He's being trained as their society secretary, but he's in his early 20s. And that's fantastic. That's our succession plan, and you know we're that's the way we want to go. And it's really good when you're going out and you're doing co-op development work, and you're saying, well, you could be a co-op, and they say, well, why? And you can say, well, look at us. That's why. It's you know we might have been made redundant 25 years ago, but we were able to keep going because we were a co-op, and because we were empowered to make those decisions. And there weren't always decisions which financially looked like they made a lot of sense at the time, because there have been times, especially in the early days, where we had to take salary, what did we euphemistically call it, a salary holiday. And we just kind of ratcheted it up, and it made it a director's loan. So we kind of kept a record of it. And as luck would have it, we were able to repay ourselves. So, but we'd had to take a salary holiday to make to last. So that versus a redundancy package didn't look the greatest decision at the time. If you were, but it turned out to be fine, because we've had sort of 10, 15 years of salary since, earning capacity and doing work that we like doing. And
like going to getting up for your work every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a long answer to a short question.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's fascinating. I can listen to you all day, Jane. We do really have just under 10 minutes though.
Really?
As Sarah says, like a responsive intergenerational workforce, which is just brilliant. So that is fantastic. So I know you also chair Leicester Rape Crisis, but I'm going to skip over that just for a moment. Maybe come back to it if there's time, because I think that's really important to do. But just on that point, I mean, each of your roles are very much about people. You know, as we've said, you've talked about being almost like this older generation being role models for this younger generation of people who are coming through at Case, and obviously at Central as well, your role as president is very much going to be as a role model and as someone who the people look up to and work with. So how do you find that, like being a role model? Who are your role models, and what would you say to young women and young men who are starting on their co-op journey? There's a lot of questions in there, Jane, 6 minutes.
Do it for really do it. If it floats your boat, then do it, try it, even if it's at our 40th anniversary, a young man, Danny, came to us, and he came to us as a worker and left after 2 years. We knew he would, but he would but he really got involved with businesses for a purpose, and went on to work for Nationwide as a sort of a bit of a stepping stone, and then had a really good rethink about his career and went to be a teacher, qualify as a teacher. So he took himself out of the work place and went back to university, qualified, and went to be a teacher. But it was really interesting listening to him to say how much he had been influenced by the 2 years he'd worked with Case and for Case. So anybody, and working with people. So as president, I'm on the Southern Membership and Community Council. So we get colleagues there who come on that, and people, members who come on that, and it's like another dimension to your life. So even if it doesn't become the be all and end of all of your life, or all of your working life, it will influence you, how you think, how you react, how you see the world. So and I think it is just something that should be available to everybody.
That's a good answer. I'll take that one.
So whether that's a role model, but I mean, people say, well, what's your role model? I say, well, I could have got it really wrong and I ended up being a personnel officer for the past 40 years. That would have been a disaster for me personally, and probably for the poor people I had to try and support.
So Jane, what I'm going to do now is come on to our very last question that we ask all women, and then I'm going to open it up. If anyone does have a question, please put it in the chat box or raise your hand, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. Hopefully we'll have time to talk about Leicester Rape Crisis as well, because it is really important. But first of all, Jane, You're on a desert island.
Oh, well, I didn't think any more about this. You did pre-warn me. What should I take with me to survive?
Everything to sustain you, to survive on your desert island.
Okay, well, the first thing I thought, when I'm going to do this, I am really going to channel University Challenge here, and I've brought with me a mascot, and let me just try and show you. There you go. She's a duck. Votes for Women. She's a suffragette duck, and you can get them from House of Commons. So I think that would she'd be good on a desert island. Sort of her that spirit of you know, if there's a problem, there is a solution. There is. I'm not terribly practical, but I'm sure with that kind of attitude, that's what you'd need on a desert island. What did you say? Two more things.
We've never had the suffragette duck before. This is amazing.
That's new.
We've got another 2 to go.
I bought quite a few of those and gave them to a few girlfriends actually for Christmas. And before they opened them, I said, it's really useful. What I bought you for Christmas this year. I thought so. What else would I take onto a desert island? Is it one of those desert islands where you, like on the radio program, where you can't take anything that will help you escape? Because I think I really would need to try and get back to civilization and other people. I don't think being on a desert island would be quite my comfort zone. I don't being on my own wouldn't be. So I would need something that reminded me of home, perhaps pictures, a telephone. Is that allowed to communicate with people? Means of communication.
I'm not sure.
I think we'll allow it this time.
Right, I need to get back home.
You're such a people person, Jane. I think you need to be able to talk to people.
I definitely need people or pictures of people. I'll probably be talking to myself, and I quite like writing. So yeah, pen and paper.
That counts as well. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah,
Jane,
and
thank you so much for your time.
That's all right.
Fantastic so far. If anyone has any questions, please do pop them in the chat. I mean, as Claudia says though, it's wonderful that you chair the Leicester rape crisis. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, that was another one I got dragooned into by a girlfriend who said, "Oh, you know, have you ever thought of being on a committee that would do something like this?" I'm on it, and she said there's no problems at the moment, which wasn't true. So I went in, and there were huge problems. I mean, it really was.
What do you mean by problems? Like in terms of the governance or the organisation, or
governance, personnel? Actually, ironically, people falling out, and a big disciplinary issue going on, and volunteers. Oh, it was awful, and I wondered what on earth I'd done to it. But actually, it's that thing that I actually would like to see Leicester rape crisis not exist, not because it's fallen apart because people have fallen out, but because there's no need for it. And sadly, that day is a very long way in the future. So 450 women get supported each year, and it's new cases, and it's equally rural areas of Leicestershire and urban areas, and it's across the piece. So that's just not good, is it? It is not good in the 21st century that an endemic crime like that is committed with such frequency and with such damage. You know, the lasting damage is terrible. But the impact of what we do, and it's therapeutic counselling, is to put broken souls, broken minds together so that they can cope with that trauma and look forward and be whole people again. And that's the language people use. I couldn't be a good mum anymore. I couldn't be a good partner. I couldn't do a good job when I went to work. I didn't like meeting people. You know, people just so badly affected by it. And then just meeting somebody who is trained, and it's not something I'm trained to do, and I don't think I could do it. It does take special people, I think, to do it, who are trained to listen and help talk and help people articulate what's happened and put it in that right place in the head, as I understand how that sort of alchemy works, so that it is in a place and doesn't seep out into all parts of their lives in that sort of poisonous way. So it just seems just
we
so
just had a message in from Mamuna, who says, I'm a doctoral student in the UK, and it's only recently I've started to research worker co-ops as part of my doctoral journey. I'm fascinated by how women make their place in working environments. I have a thing for feminism, great, and absolutely loved how Jane described her journey. Thank you, and welcome, Mamuna, and thanks for that note.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And just to say, you know, sort of on my take on the feminist piece is that feminism is good for men, and that's how we work within Central England Co-op and CASE, because paternalism is only good for the alpha males, and it isn't very good for them. If you look at some of the alpha males around, when you look at them, they all seem a bit damaged by it. So
you know, that's coming up throughout this. You know, this is women's voices, but you know, it's not exclusionary to men, but it's
no.
But you know, there's a fantastic film actually I went to see. I've seen it twice now, called Women Talking, which I really recommend. Actually,
oh, I've read about that. That does look a good
fantastic.
film.
It's touching on all those things that you've been talking about, but it includes men in that voice.
Yeah.
So could you say that film again, please?
It's called Women
Talking.
It's fantastic, and it explores all kinds of issues around but it's around violence against women, really. So it just made me think about I had to go again at the weekend because me and my mate needed to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, this is I bought the Suffragette duck, and that's my mug. So that's from the International Men's Day event that we ran in November at Central.
And Jane, I just want to say as well, Jane will be coming as president of Central, will be coming to Malawi as well. So Central lead on a fantastic Malawi partnership program, which is a Principle 6 project, which is this co-op support. And there again, Jane, as you know, the ambassador and the president of Central, has said yes. So she'll be out kind of, you know, showcasing and Central in Malawi. So I just want to say huge thanks for saying yes to that as well, Jane.
Oh, that's right. I'm just going to share another photograph, which is I sponsor a couple of children out in Malawi to go to school, and before this came up, and I've just sent them to you, Rebecca, the two kids. They're lovely kids. So I'm going to be able to meet them because they're in Lilongwe, which is where I'll be going. So that's fantastic. So yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much, Jane. I'm going to sort of start winding up now because I know it's a little bit past 1 o'clock and I know some people have to go. But Jane, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, and you know, it's been a real honour, and I feel very you know, to just talk about me is great. And I've enjoyed it so much, and yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Oh, that's wonderful.
No, thanks. Stay on with us,
just
Jane,
ahead of just before we leave as well, a couple of quick announcements. So I'm not sure how many tickets are left, but on the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day, I know Central Co-op are running their own Co-op Women's Voices event, which has been before. It's absolutely wonderful if you can. I will find the link soon, unless you have it to hand, Elaine. I might be able to find it very, very shortly. And then the other thing to say is that our next Co-op Women's Voices is on the 15th of March with Kath Muller. Kath is a wonderful person.
Oh, yeah.
So Mamuna, if you're interested in worker co-ops, definitely come along to that. So
definitely, yes. Kath's great.
She's wonderful. She's very much involved in the worker co-op movement, and it is quite a wonderfully radical woman. She is not afraid of saying that capitalism is terrible and will talk your ear off about it in the best possible way. So it's going to be absolutely wonderful to see her. And I'm just going to end this by sharing these lovely photos. So who's this? Is that Star?
That's Star, yeah. And yeah, Favour.
Absolutely beautiful children. Wonderful. Okay, and then finally thank you. There we go. Elaine, thank you, Elaine. She shared the Eventbrite list. So if you
Oh,
happen to be
thanks,
able to get
Elaine. Yeah.
to Staffordshire in the UK at the National Memorial Arboretum on the 8th of March, that's definitely well worth coming to if you can. But other than that, Jane, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks once again for the invitation. Nice to see everybody. If everybody could take their it's nice to see people's faces. If you can, just 2 minutes.
There's a lot of new faces today as well. So
yeah, lovely.
Us.
Hi, everybody.
Ah, everyone is. Hi.
Look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Take care. Bye.
We're
now.
going to stay on, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Great, Jane. Bye.
Bye.